I was born ready.
Cue the music.
True monks.
It's a beautiful night for a wrestling show. Did you know that C2C radio show can also broadcast on a Monday? That's right. Your ears are not deceiving you. Your eyes are not fooling you. Corner to Corner is live and on the air on a Monday because we can. I think that's
yeah, but I hope they're not watching us.
That'd be weird. I'm in my underwear. That would just be awkward.
That's fantastic, buddy.
You're welcome, buddy. I'm here to entertain the masses. What's going on, everybody? I hope you had a great weekend. I don't know that the WWE Clash really gave you a whole lot to celebrate, but we'll talk about it anyway. Why not? I mean, it's got nothing else to do. It's just Monday. It's myself, Stan Grubb, my tag team partner. Joining me right now, Brian Taylor.
What's up? Sorry about that.
What's up? Yeah, it's not a problem. Hey, these allergies are killing everybody, especially with the fall, and it's still summer weather outside. Somebody needs to clue Mother Nature in.
You can't mess with Mother Nature.
Nope, she's a mad scientist. That's very true.
Yep.
So, the name of the game tonight is kind of a Raw watch-along. It's on in the background here, so anything that kind of pops up throughout Raw we'll make sure we cover. But realistically speaking, we're just here to kind of shoot the breeze and cover all the events that were from last night, and we'll talk about the news that's going on. We might even have an interesting debate that came from an All Elite Wrestling fan site that doesn't talk about an All Elite Wrestling performer. Yeah, there's a lot of questions I have about this one. We'll get into it. But first and foremost, we did find out tonight as Raw began in the opening segment, we were confirmed to have the main event for Hell in the Cell. The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, is going to be taking on Seth Rollins for the WWE Universal Championship. This matchup, good Lord, how in the world did the Viking Raiders move so quick? They are insane. We got confirmation that it's going to be Bray Wyatt, Seth Rollins, Hell in the Cell for the Universal title. Brian, this is definitely a good step in the right direction for Bray Wyatt, but do you have any faith whatsoever that Bray Wyatt comes ahead with the belt?
Actually, I think they're gonna get it right this time. And some of the things that are being said as far as Rowan's getting a partner. I think Bray's been alluded to as getting a partner. I think you're going to get the family back together, the band back together, if you will, at Hell in a Cell, to include Braun Strowman. I think they're going to go that route. Just because of what's on the horizon with SmackDown, I think some Fox executives hopefully are doing the right thing here, being like, no, we want this, and we want this, and we want this, and by God, we're going to get it. So...
Yeah, there's a huge attention right now on the deal with Fox and what their focus is. Many of the reps have been quoted as saying they want to be sports focused. They want their show, they want SmackDown to be athleticism, pro wrestling, period, right? So USA, of course, has always been comfortable, and I think will continue to be until the end of time, comfortable with Raw being the drama show. The comedies, segments, skits, whatever you want to call it. Uh, the sports entertainment, the entertainment part of the sport, which in its own right, I guess, can be done if it's done correctly. But with what they're focusing on right now, it definitely appears that they're. We were talking about this last night. It appears that they're really leveling out the playing field for each show to have what they may consider to be balanced rosters.
Yeah, but I mean, something tells me though that Fox is gonna win out in this, and I think they'll be balanced to a point. But I can clearly see SmackDown being quite top heavy.
Yeah.
And based off of the fact that supposedly there's no more, what do you call it, where one jumps from one brand to the other on a weekly basis. You know what I'm talking about, this superstar.
Mm-hmm.
There ain't going to be no more of that. So take that into account, and the fact that you look at the SmackDown promo on Fox, I think you're going to get Becky Lynch, when that'll give you Seth Rollins over there, and I imagine you're going to get some big name players like Bray Wyatt also.
Yeah, I can tell that they're trying to mix it as best they can. I mean, we know that on the 11th and the 14th, that Friday and that Monday, there's going to be a new draft, and they're going to be working to balance the rosters out as best they can. Whoa. I don't know if you just caught that that Styles clash, but holy crap. I would tell you this. When it comes down to when they're working on this draft, they've got to be looking at it from the perspective of what's going to serve each. Well, I mean, I don't know. There's another way to put it. What's going to serve each master, right? I mean, you got Fox that wants it one way. You got USA that they kind of let Vince do what Vince wants to do, as long as he brings in people. It's kind of their thought process. But of course, if it was on FX, they'd say, well, yeah, go ahead, BTV PG or BTV 14 or hell, just be R rated. We don't care. It's all about who you're going to serve. And I think with, just like you said, they're going to bring in a lot more athletic performers, but also, like with a guy like Braun, you get the box office draw, kind of that special attraction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the way it's going to shake out. You're going to get the evil Bray over there, and he'll get his minions, and that's going to give you Seth and Roman, somebody to go against.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of good that can come out of that. I think the Fiend right now, if you're WWE, if you're Vince, Triple H obviously, but if you're Vince, you got to look at it and start recognizing that, hey, the Fiend is going to make you a lot of money, and if you do this right, he can make you money hand over fist continually, almost to the extent of Roman and the rest of the top merchandise sellers. It's already been proven with that special edition box that they sold out of in 4 hours or something crazy like that.
What was this?
So there was a Firefly Funhouse special edition box, a collector box that was put on sale during SummerSlam. And about halfway through, the box was sold out. It was $100 box of different paraphernalia. So it was like the puppets, a T-shirt, a Fiend mask, and there were some other ones. So what happened was that box was just limited edition, and it was only 500 of them made, and it was all sold out before the middle of SummerSlam. So
wow.
Before his entrance really aired, before he even came on television for his first official matchup. So, I mean, that's a pretty good litmus test of whether or not your person can sell, your character can sell.
Yeah, but, how long's it been since somebody sells merchandise and they still don't do anything with them?
That's true. That's true. I mean, I think that there's a lot of examples of that. I mean, look what they did to Punk. Punk was a top merchandise seller for years before he ever got the pipe bomb. And he was outselling Cena. This is something we've read. We also know that Roman, when he was at his height of popularity, was outselling Cena, and they didn't do right by him. Look at Daniel Bryan, another good example. Sold a ton of merchandise. Yeah, they finally gave him his shot, but he was selling a ton of merchandise way before that. So merch sales, you're right, doesn't necessarily equate to being at the top of the card.
Yeah, that practice has gone the way of the dodo.
That's a shame too, because when you really look at what it really equates to is the almighty dollar, right? It's the big, it's the factor that really spells success for not just wrestling but business in general, and yet. And it's not limited to Vince, although I think he's more magnified because he's what we see the most of. But businessmen in general just can't seem to get out of their own way.
Well, I mean, we've spoken about him screwing things up for some time, so.
True. And I don't mean to, beat a dead horse, but so much. I think it's more just identifying, okay, so this is what we've seen. This is what we know. So. Another good example of, and this is something that's getting ready to come up. Now, last night, forgive me if I'm wrong there, Brian, but wasn't the King of the Ring final supposed to air last night during the Clash?
Yeah, but I read today that I guess there was an injury or something where they couldn't do it last night.
Alrighty then.
So I'm sure they just, overbooked the card and the one thing that could get bumped would be the match that you've been hyping for, the last month. Yeah, let's kick the King of the Ring out, because if they were truly injured, they wouldn't be having it tonight either. So, but so it was bumped. Oh well, there was an injury, I guess, supposedly, from what I saw.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see. I would like to see them, be a little bit more attentive to that, because of the fact that, during SmackDown and Raw last week, they had it on graphics that it was going to air during the pay-per-view, but then on SmackDown towards the end, they had it set up that it was actually going to show up on Raw. So they were confused. I don't know if they just changed their mind at the beginning of the week and they just started to change the graphic. But I remember reading on Twitter how there were some fans that were confused about it. I know myself, I was confused. Stop confused.
I wasn't so much confused. I just simply, literally forgot about it until today. Like, literally forgot that it was even supposed to be on there.
Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing that you forgot about it?
I would say that's a bad thing.
So let me get this right. You're saying, sir, that forgetting about, a wrestling show or a wrestling match that's been pushed for, let's see, how long has this been going on? 1, 2, 3, 5 weeks? Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
I agree. That's bad.
And not only that, but so let's put it in perspective, right? So, when did Sasha turn bad?
Sasha came back the night after SummerSlam.
All right, when did she jump Becky? You remember? Was it that night, or did it go a week or two before she did it?
She attacked Becky that same night because Becky ran out for reasons I'll never understand. That actually we'll get to that, because that's kind of a good sidebar.
Okay, so hold on. So that feud was set up roughly about the time the King of the Ring started.
Yep, exactly.
Right. Charlotte and Bayley came well after that. Seth and Braun came well after that. Seth, Braun, Rude, and Ziggler came well after that.
Yeah.
AJ and Cedric came after that. Just trying to do it by memory here. The women's tag team was well after that. But you see what I'm going?
Yeah.
Quite possibly the longest program you had going into this pay-per-view, right?
Mm-hmm.
Supposed to mean something, right? God, they keep telling you how many Hall of Famers won the King of the Ring, and they tell you how what this did for Steve Austin, right?
Yeah.
Because the King of the Ring, that's where it all started for Austin. But that's the match that we're gonna just say, okay, we'll do it on Raw. It makes no sense. Literally makes no sense.
Yeah, I don't know where they get the idea that, hey, if we do this a certain way, this is going to generate the response we want. Like, for example, and we beat this horse dead enough. I don't know if we need to, but let's look at Baron Corbin instead. Instead of going the obvious direction, because I think everybody talks about Roman now. It's kind of passe. But when you look at Baron Corbin, we were talking about it last night during the show. When you look at Baron Corbin in NXT, what was his biggest benefit?
He was all by himself and not talking.
Yes, strong silent type. His matches were quick, and he didn't have to talk. Like, he did smack talk on the outside of the ring, but he never held a mic. He never had to. So
Right.
you got him in short bursts. Your crowd was counting along. If you go back and look at NXT from when Baron Corbin was like, we're talking 5-second victories. Like, it was kind of silly at first, but then it kind of gave you this impression, kind of like it did with Braun and with Ryback, even if you want to go back further in history, of this guy's credible. Like, this guy's a badass. He can beat anybody. And it doesn't matter how good they are or where they came from. He was just beating them. So you got that guy. You got that character. And all three of us talked about him having just crazy amounts of potential as possibly being the next Undertaker-esque kind of character. And that was one of the ones that... Excuse me, I got the hiccups all of a sudden. That was one of the characters that Rob actually identified as somebody he considered that could really take that next step. But what happened? They thought, they being whoever the upper echelon in the office is, and again, I just think it's passe to start calling names, so they thought that, no, if we change this guy, he'll make us more money because he'll make people boo him more. He'll create more heat, more anger from fans. And realistically, I mean, what was the first mistake they made?
Getting rid of the lone wolf.
Right. So they shaved his head. Yes,
Yep.
he was balding. I get that, and nobody feels that pain more than I do. But he was balding, so they shaved his head. And then the next thing they did was they made him an authority figure. And then, let's go before that. They gave him the Money in the Bank, and he failed. They turned him into a big goof. Clearly not smart enough, even though he was smart enough to be successful for almost 2 years in NXT. But now suddenly he gets to the main roster and he's just not smart enough to get the job done. Okay, fine. So then after that, you make it so he can't win a major match. He can win on like Raw and SmackDown, but he doesn't win anything major. Then you fail him even more and make him an authority figure, and then you give him a microphone. Like, why would you want to do that? Okay, NXT to me is the place where you say, let's try this idea. Let's change this and let's see if we can make you more marketable in this regard. But like when you get to the main stage, when you get to the main two rosters, and keep in mind, this is from a perspective of before NXT hits USA, Baron Corbin doesn't survive in this role. And look, I mean, he's in the finals of the King of the Ring, and we all seemingly forgot about him last night.
Yeah, and then fantastic. And again, though, I think a lot of that just has to do with they think they're smarter than the average wrestling fan, and they really think they're smarter than the lifelong wrestling fans who, basically come to the shows and all this stuff. And Baron Corbin is another one that's simply, in my opinion, as of now, failed. Even if you give him King of the Ring, it doesn't mean nothing.
Right.
So what, he's going to run around with a crown and scepter and oh, look at me, I'm King Corbin. Oh, okay. Well, you got to do more than that, you know. Um, but it's just they literally think they're smarter,
Yeah.
and that's the problem.
And you know, the whole issue with being quote unquote trying to be the smartest guy in the room, all it really does is just prove how stupid you are.
Right.
I mean, you start working over the top and going overboard. And I get it, you know, your characters have always been touted as larger than life. I understand that. But sooner or later, you have to recognize that larger than life doesn't just mean one direction. There's multiple ways that can be expanded upon. And Baron Corbin's character as the lone wolf, the guy that didn't associate with anyone. He wasn't a good guy, he wasn't a bad guy, he didn't have to be either one. All he did was go out there and fight. And it worked. Hell, they did the same thing for Kevin Owens when he was in NXT. He called himself a prize fighter, which was great. And then he got to the main roster, and that was part of the reason he was so successful in his feud with Cena, because he treated it like it was a fight. Like it had a big match, big fight feel. Plus, you have to credit that to Cena for helping him in his debut on the main stage.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's Cena,
Right.
so we're not talking, some smaller program. That's Cena and
Right.
big money, big show Cena, big money Cena, whatever you want to call him.
Big match, John.
Yeah, there you go. He's got a way of coming through.
I've always admired the guys that can get in there and work with anybody. Like, you know, back in the day, you remember when we would talk about the wrestlers that it didn't matter who they were in the ring with, they could make anybody look good. Like Flair was synonymous for it, Steamboat, Angle, Michaels, Bret Hart. You know, you had those guys that could make anybody look good. You know, I mean, today outside of maybe Dolph Ziggler, and we were talking about him a little earlier about how he bumps all over the place, I don't know that there's a guy right now, maybe AJ Styles, that could work with literally anybody and make them look good.
AJ can do it.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know how many are on the roster anymore. I think Orton could have done it back in the day, but I don't know if he can pull it off now. Bray, I think, could do it.
Yeah, Bray Wyatt's proven that he can work with just about anybody, and that includes like a guy like Braun Strowman, who he's just like a whole different animal all by himself. Just agile and fast, and he can wrestle, he can brawl. I mean, at 300 pounds, it seems unheard of for a guy to dive off the top rope, but he pulled it off last night.
The Dolphin.
Yeah.
Brr, brr.
It's like one of those belly flops you see where the big guy at a swimming pool dives off, and all you can think is, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, he kind of looked like Seth took all 300 pounds of that right across the chest.
Yeah. Well, and the coolest part of that in watching what a guy like Braun can do, the coolest part is seeing that he can do it with anybody. You know, he's another guy that, you know, for all the complaining that so many people do about like a guy like Roman Reigns, his fights, his brawls with Braun Strowman were over like crazy. Like people went nuts for it because Braun is just a psychotic kind of monster. You can't really equate for how popular and how over his character is, and yet, just like last night, they continue to screw him up. Like, how do you mess up a guy like Braun Strowman that's basically your second coming of Hulk Hogan?
Don't get me started. We've already explained it multiple times, or I have. You're killing me. Put the Kool-Aid down.
I'm sorry. Put it down. Okay. All right.
Put the Kool-Aid down.
So, and right now, of course, if you're joining us at home, definitely want to thank you for tuning in to C2C radioshow.com and Corner to Corner tonight. with our thoughts on all sorts of stuff that's happened this week, including Clash of Champions, including if there's anything else breaking on Raw, we'll mention that. But hey, Brian, I don't know if you caught the news, but Impact, Anthem Entertainment officially purchases and partners with Access TV or Access TV. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. AXS TV.
I think they call it Axis.
Axis? Okay. So Axis TV now in a partnership with Anthem Entertainment, and thus Impact finally Impact has an actual home. Big move for them. I'm excited for them, but I gotta say, I'm reading an article from, you know who Killer Cross is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Killer Cross was in some deep trouble for refusing to blade or cut himself for a matchup that he was booked for at Slammiversary. So he refused to do it, said it was unsafe and he wouldn't do it. And after that, he hasn't been booked. So apparently there is a lawsuit in the works. Now, granted, this is from Sportskeeda and also Bleacher Report, and Killer Cross was not really able to comment, but so much, obviously because it's litigation and it's pending. But apparently he's going to be suing them for breach of contract. Hopefully Impact can get out of these legal woes so perhaps they can make some forward motion and maybe start getting something more positive going on backstage.
Well, I mean, a guy should get punished for not wanting to blade.
Yeah.
Right. He simply shouldn't. Not in today's wrestling world. I mean, but I guess, however, on the other side of it, if you're under a contract and you know that could happen, you see where.
I mean, it's part of the. I hate to say it like this because I hate to treat people like pieces of meat, but it's part of the job. It's a scary part. Trust me. There's a reason that I don't do it. Because I'd drop in the middle of the ring and it just wouldn't be entertaining. At least not for me.
It might be.
But I mean, the truth of the matter is, and Nigel McGuinness ran into this kind of a problem when he was trying to make the transition from Impact to WWE. And because of blading, his health was in question, and there was some concerns as to what would happen next. Now, of course, we know that Nigel McGuinness is completely healthy now, and thank God for that. But if anyone has ever watched the last of Nigel McGuinness, which is his documentary, it tells this story of a guy that has a scare with hepatitis C. And because of that scare, it drastically and dramatically changes his life. Not just his career, but his life. And he has to retire. So when he retires, it really makes you think, man, is it worth it to have to go out there and, intentionally cut yourself in an effort to make a match better? And while I don't really want to get into that, because I think that's more of a philosophical debate, everybody's going to have their own take on it. I do think that if you're under contract, just like you mentioned, Brian, that there's going to be some expectations there. And yeah, some of them may not seem fair, but if you signed your name on it, I'm sorry, man. I mean, I got nothing but respect for Killer Cross, and I'm sure he'll come out on the other side of this, most likely the victor. But I got to say, you signed your name, dude. And that's a tough deal. Yeah, I get it. Maybe you're not comfortable, but you agreed, and they agreed to pay you for it. Now, unless they're not paying you, then in that case, I guess I could kind of understand why he may not do it.
Well, I mean, the other thing, too, is they should make sure that the welfare of their athletes is never in question.
Yeah.
There should be some regular testing going on. That type of stuff. If they're going to ask people to do it, they need to make sure that it's safe for said person to do it to begin with.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about any diseases.
And that's really the thing. I mean, we work and we live in a world now where you have certain precautions that you can take, and blood tests that can be done, and checkups that can be done. They have doctors backstage. They have, in WWE's case, they've got an entire medical facility at the performance center to evaluate and make sure that you're good to go. So before it even becomes a question, you can eliminate that concern. And I think that does put the accountability or the responsibility of a responsible promotion to make sure those steps are taken whenever possible. And that doesn't necessarily mean paying for all of the medical costs. I think if you have the position to do that, it's great that you can, but I think it would also be unrealistic to expect, Bob's Championship Wrestling out of Utah to pay for your medical expenses when you already know the deal that you're paying dues, and number one, he probably doesn't have the budget for it. There's a huge difference. But I think that there's something to be said for checkups, making sure people are as safe as possible.
But we're not talking Bob's Wrestling Alliance.
Very true.
And we're talking a major company.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if the major company is going to ask you to do something, then to me, it's on them to make sure it's done safely.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that, because there's just a lot of people right now that are reckless as it is and not taking precautions on their own. We've seen multiple examples of guys that I wouldn't necessarily say that they were careless with another one's well-being, but took risks that they didn't have to take. I mean, remember the baseball bat incident with Sammy Callahan. Now, I don't think he was trying to kill Eddie Edwards, but at the same time, do I think it was a risk he didn't have to take? Absolutely. And Eddie Edwards could have been seriously debilitated, much less retired out of that whole deal.
True.
It's a question more of, and go figure, in wrestling we could talk about this. It's a question of ethics, I think. And that's where I think that Killer Kross might have a leg to stand on, because historically what we know about Impact, even just from the public eye, is that they haven't always made the right decision to take care of their talent. And it doesn't necessarily mean they can't change, but for right now, man, it's going to be a challenge. It takes a long time to clean up or to turn a cruise ship. You know what I mean? It doesn't just turn on a dime like a car would.
Yeah, but I mean, again, though, I think out of all their problems they've had, right? They're not out of business.
Right.
They just signed a new TV deal. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that, again, this is part of the perception that the WWE feeds you is, because they're not the WWE, people don't think they're successful. And, I mean, they're not going nowhere. They're still around. Mm-hmm. And it's looking bright for them. So I think whatever formula they use, whatever dysfunctional formula they use, it just works for them.
Yeah, I mean, we've given them a hard time, but, gosh, 2003 was when they started, and here we are 16 years later. And we've predicted death for Impact multiple times. We've called time of death for Impact Wrestling multiple times, and somehow they miraculously kick out, and they do it in pretty grandiose fashion. And this is no different. This deal with Access TV is huge. It's a big deal. This is a company that has Mark Cuban involved. This is a company that's got, the star power of a guy like Steve Harvey, who's, one of the most famous comedians in the world, much less entertainers. You've got a lot of serious money in this network. And you've also got a wrestling background in this network. They've got New Japan Wrestling there. And there's already rumors of a big partnership between Impact and New Japan, which to me would be huge. Not to mention the most recent debut of World of Women Superheroes. Jeez, Women of
Just say
Wrestling
wow.
Superheroes. Yeah, thank
Just
you.
say wow.
You've got WoW Superheroes that just debuted with a stellar first episode of season 2. Tessa Blanchard being their champion. I mean, you've got 3 great promotions in place right now. God, now you got Wrestling Friday, you got wrestling on Monday, you got wrestling on Wednesday. How much further do we have to go till there's wrestling every day of the week?
Well, I don't think it's too far off. Because if you think of a Sunday night, a pay-per-view will be on a Sunday night, and that some weekends you probably will have it every night. And I'm sure it is every night if you can find it on the dial. If you look hard enough, I'm sure you can find it somewhere.
Well, plus, I mean, All Elite's got their pay-per-views on Saturdays typically.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but I mean, NXT had them on Saturday too, so that's not really going to change it too much. But I'll lay money if you look hard enough, you can find something almost every night.
Well, and then of course, anytime there's streaming content, through Powerbomb.tv or IndependentWrestling.tv or NothingElseOn.tv or, I mean, now you've got content so many different places. I can remember during the Attitude Era, we would talk about, man, wouldn't it be cool if there was a channel that had 24 hours a day, nothing but wrestling? And now we actually live in a time and an age where 24 hours a day we've got wrestling. It's pretty awesome. When it's good wrestling, anyway.
Yeah, when it's good. All right. So shall we touch on a little Clash?
Yeah, let's get to the WWE
Knock
Clash.
it out.
Talk about some results. Yep, and WWE continues to botch it with this stupid King of the Ring. God, guys drive me nuts. Where the heck did the results go?
Yep, because this is going to get him so over.
Yeah, I mean, Chad Gable.
Watch. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Chad Gable has been through so much in his career, like just with WWE. And here you've got a chance, an opportunity to really put him up further a notch. And you've already made him a star. You've already made people believe in him. And now you finally get a chance to see him really shine, and instead you go the direction of Baron Corbin, the guy that we just spent, an exorbitant amount of time, probably more time than we've ever really spent, for corner to corner talking about how Baron Corbin is just a not good. And it's not to say he can't wrestle, it's not to say he can't perform, but he's just not being positioned at a point for success, in my opinion. And I think, Brian, you agree. And
yeah, but I mean, again, there are some people that you can't, even if you put them in the right spot, that doesn't mean they're going to be successful.
Yeah.
And I think he's just one of those guys. You got to rework the whole package, as far as me. I mean, because if you ever put him at the top, there's no way I'm paying money to go see a world title match with him in it. Are you kidding me?
Well, that's part of the reason that those 2 pay-per-views did so poorly just recently this year, with him and Seth Rollins. Like, I mean, everybody liked Seth, but nobody really wanted to see Baron Corbin. That's the reason that the feud with Seth and Becky versus Lacey and Baron failed. It's not the right type of presentation, and we won't leave that horse alone. Let's leave it in the dirt. So let's talk Clash of Champions. Last night, Clash of Champions emanated from Charlotte, North Carolina, the home of the Four Horsemen, Ric Flair country. And we started off the night with a triple threat for the Cruiserweight Championship. Brian, hey, I believe we both picked correctly. Drew Gulak successfully retained the Cruiserweight Championship.
Yeah, I don't remember picks.
Late edition.
Well, some of them. I don't remember that one.
Well, that one I remembered, but I don't remember all of them myself, so I'm just going off what I remember. I'm not going to guess but so much. The U.S. Championship matchup, I did actually watch this in the rebroadcast of it. AJ Styles and Cedric Alexander. Cedric continues to be a huge, huge star. And it's on WWE if they fail him at this point because he has just so much potential. Great matchup between the two. AJ Styles retains the United States Championship after hitting the Styles Clash in the middle of the ring. I will say this: I'm glad to see the Styles Clash start to get some play as a finish.
Yeah, I mean that's his finisher through most of his career.
Yeah.
So that's what brought him here, not that flying elbow.
The phenomenal forearm, vintage AJ Styles. That's my Michael Cole impression for the night. Next up, we had Raw Tag Team Championship on the line as Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler challenged Seth Rollins and Braun Strowman for the titles. I believe, Brian, that we were both in the same realm as far as the Tag Team Championship changing hands, and that it definitely did as Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode won the titles from the odd couple known as Braun Strowman and Seth Rollins. But hey, don't worry, we don't have any other tag teams. We just got Seth and Braun and Dolph and Robert Roode.
Yeah, but again, that's just stupid stuff they do from time to time. Well, let's pair the champion with his opponent 6 months down the road, and it'll be great television.
This just in from the Corner to Corner chat. Dan, you're killing me, dude. Really? All hail King Corbin. Some of our fans for Corner to Corner, I think they just like who they like. It's okay. We'll give you that moment.
I'm beginning to think you got a crush on Corbin the way you keep jumping to him.
Corbin. It's like Hercules. I will say this, though. I do like the pairing of Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode. I think they're a good tag team. I think they could have potential. I want to see what they do long term, if they do anything long term with them. That is, if Dolph can walk after getting obliterated by Braun.
That didn't hurt.
I mean, anytime you basically bend yourself in half the wrong way, that's not a good sign. You're not supposed to go that way, sir. Braun Strowman doesn't, and I have or not Braun, but Bray Wyatt does it, and I have questions as to how he manages that. Charlotte Flair and Bayley was next. Bayley successfully retains the title after throwing Charlotte face first into an exposed turnbuckle and getting the win, seemingly out of nowhere. And then she grabs the title and sprints backstage. Doesn't just retreat and celebrate. No, she grabs it and sprints to the back. I mean, I don't understand. We talked about it last week. The whole heel turn for Bayley. You really couldn't afford to let Charlotte win this one, unless it was by maybe DQ.
Yeah. I mean, this one is just continuing this whole evil Bayley thing that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and then she tweets out there last night, that Becky cheated, and we'll talk about the match between Becky and Sasha here in a minute. So she's following with her "I'm loyal to Sasha" and all of that. But then she also tweets out, "Hey, thanks for the great match, Charlotte. Who's next to step up?" So in the same tweet, or in the same Twitter account, we've got basically a bad guy tweet and a good guy tweet. It just didn't make sense. I'm like, okay, so we're just going to continue down this odd rabbit hole of nothing makes sense here. But sure, why not? In breaking news, hey, Brian, I don't know if you were excited or not, but they're going to find out the gender of Maria and Mike Kanellis' baby.
Oh, that's cool.
I know you're excited. Maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a childbirth. Why not?
Wow. Well, all right. You're recognizing the magnitude of a child coming into this world. All right. Well, we're sensitive here.
I mean, you ain't got to be such a hateful little shit all the time.
Damn. Okay. I'm not hateful.
Hateful.
SmackDown Tag Team Championships were on the line. Actually, I didn't realize that they were on the line when this matchup was announced, but the Revival taking on the New Day for the championship. This tag match was actually very, very good. Big E and Xavier did a great job. Xavier Woods selling the leg injury, which kept the storyline continuity going, which I really, really enjoyed. Wait. Oh,
What are you doing?
So, okay. WWE continues to try to throw the swerve out there. Yeah. So Maria Kanellis just explained that the gender of the baby that was just revealed is truly her child, but the father of the child is Ricochet.
Okay, so
Moving on back to the tag match.
yeah, because if you don't stay on target, we'll be talking about it next week.
Yeah, good point. So moving forward with the tag match again, great matchup between Big E, Xavier Woods, and the Revival. Storybook tag team wrestling from the Revival, as always, cutting the ring off, making sure that they work a body part. I mean, this matchup did tell the story very, very well, and it really made the Revival a lot more credible in the bad guy role as they continued to punish Xavier Woods, and instead of pinning him after hitting the Shatter Machine, which they could have gotten a 100 count, they made him tap out to an inverted figure 4, and we got new SmackDown Tag Team Champions.
Yeah, what was to me was interesting is they kind of look like in the NXT version of the Revival.
Yeah.
So again, I think this is the Fox influence coming into play, or somebody finally told Vince, "Hey, you're missing the boat."
Well, I mean, for whatever reason, we can be grateful that we finally get to see the Revival do what the Revival does best, and that's tag team wrestling. I mean, there are some things that they did super well that really made this match even better. You know, they eliminated Big E. They kept working on the injured guy. They kept it working on Xavier Woods, so the story of the leg injury carried from beginning to end, and you really didn't have any reason to doubt that if they continued to work that body part, which really goes back to something you don't really see a lot of in wrestling right now, and that's just the psychology of, okay, this guy's injured. If we work this part enough, if we inflict enough pain, he'll give up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was good to see some old school wrestling finally, because that's what it was.
Yeah. So we go from old school to, I guess, to new school. Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville, Fire and Ice, challenging for the Women's Tag Team Championship, challenging Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. This matchup seemed as if it was just a little off center. It wasn't horrible by any stretch of the imagination. It had some moments where it was actually quite good, but they just didn't seem like they were all on the same page, and I think that kind of hurt this matchup. Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss do successfully retain the titles, but a question becomes now of chemistry with these four ladies.
What do you mean by chemistry?
It just seemed like they weren't really communicating very well, and then of course, Sonya, I think, got dropped a couple times where it kind of put her loopy and may have set the pace of the match back even further.
Well, I would imagine that probably had more to do with it than anything. The two backdrops or whatever looked like she landed kind of wrong.
Yeah,
And then after that, she didn't look like she was really in it all the way.
yeah. The first backdrop she took was definitely kind of nasty. The second one, it just seemed like it kind of forced the issue. I'm hoping she's okay, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if she's in the concussion protocol right now.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
So next up, we got the Intercontinental Championship matchup. Shinsuke Nakamura defends against The Miz. I think Sami Zayn was a highlight for this matchup as he continued to berate the crowd and talk a little trash while The Miz was getting beat up. There was a point where The Miz hit the skull-crushing finale, and it seemed like Brian's prediction was going to come true, that somehow The Miz was going to come out with the title, but they ended up having a big schmoz where Sami Zayn gets involved, and now Nakamura hits the Kinshasa and knocking out The Miz to retain the title.
Alas, it was not The Miz's night.
Guess the A-lister just didn't get his moment.
No, not in Charlotte.
So we go from the Intercontinental title from SmackDown to the Raw Women's Championship. Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch. All the build-up, all the hype, all the opportunity you had here with this matchup realistically could have been a big, big moment for Sasha Banks. And instead, it made you not only have questions as to what their goal is with Sasha, but also it made you question why they would want to make Becky Lynch hesitate when she's done nothing but be proactive in moments where she has a chance with a chair or to take the advantage and win. I mean, that's been what's made Becky Lynch the man. That's been what's made her gimmick or her character even more believable, was that she was just doing it to be on top. And in this case, they had a great brawl. It was a good matchup as far as some of the different pieces. But I think this matchup left us with more questions than answers, as Sasha Banks wins by disqualification as the referee takes a chair shot from Becky Lynch. Granted, she didn't do it on purpose, but there were a lot of questions here.
I don't have questions. I just think it was some stupid booking.
All right, I was trying to be gentle.
Like almost like they woke up this morning and when all the names were up on the chalkboard, they forgot who was the good guy and who was supposed to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was a good match. Thought it was solid. I said it last night. I was half expecting them to even forget what kind of match it was, and that after they brawled up into the concession area, that when they got back down, the ref was going to let them continue. I mean, it just made no sense.
There is a story coming out of this matchup which is interesting. Apparently, in the time that Becky and Sasha were brawling on the outside of the ring, apparently a fan reached over the rail and smacked Sasha Banks on the butt.
Oh, no, there's pictures.
So Sasha, and I don't know if this is Sasha the character or Sasha Banks just speaking out as a performer, but basically she stated today that she's going to sue the fan.
Well, I don't blame her. I mean, that's a sexual assault.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a felony. And personally, they should, there should be an investigation into it, and if they find them, he should go to jail.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's absolutely that. It's against the law. And hey, one of the big rules of this type of event, of professional wrestling, is don't touch the talent. You keep your hands off them. If you're in the stands, stay in the stands and be a fan and enjoy the show, but don't touch them. I mean, we can remember times where, and I know Brian, you remember where the Macho Man beat the hell out of a fan that tried to jump the rail in WCW quite a few times. I mean,
yeah, but so Yeah, but this is a little bit different in the fact that they were in the stands, and I don't know if Becky caught it. You know what I'm saying? Where something like that, you can see it coming.
Hmm.
But this, may have happened so fast. I'm not sure because I don't remember seeing it on when it, while we were watching it.
Hmm.
So it must have been one of the, um, must have happened so fast that you just missed it. But which would have meant that the guys in the back missed it, and it may not have even been known until sometime later in the evening. And by then, that fan could have shagged and ran away.
Hmm.
But there are pictures of his face, and the Charlotte PD should plaster it and find out who he is and take him to court. And I'll lay money that if this guy gets charged with a felony and thrown in jail, and it probably won't happen but so many more times.
Now, I did notice in one of the pictures I saw was Becky not looking at Sasha but looking towards the crowd, and this look on her face like she was just kind of surprised about what was happening. So you're probably right, and that was a picture I only saw this afternoon. It definitely happened way faster than we could see on television, but in the photos you can definitely see her just with this incredulous look on her face, like, wow, I can't believe this is happening right in front of me. And I think the fact that it happened so quickly, just like you mentioned, they're going to have to actually take some steps to make sure that things are set up properly.
Yeah, well, I mean, one is not to go into the crowd.
Yeah. Yeah,
especially when it's not called for, it's not needed, it's not a falls count anywhere. It's technically the match is over, and I'm sure this isn't the first time where somebody's done something like that, or put their nose into a storyline where they shouldn't have put it. And not saying it's the talent's fault, but again, management should really look and be like, yeah, we don't need to do that no more.
Yeah.
Especially when it's not called for.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and it's almost a shame, but there's a lot of examples now of fans just really behaving in just some awful ways towards wrestlers and performers in general, and it surprises me that it's gone on this long without actually seeing some major repercussions, someone going to jail, serving time for a felony, all of those pieces. Because, I mean, it's not like you can't see these guys. I mean, there's so many people with cameras nowadays. That guy, just like you pointed out, he's probably going to get some jail time for it because there's no way to get around it.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too hard to track him down.
So let's keep going with WWE's Clash here. We've got the WWE Championship as Randy Orton challenges Kofi Kingston. Randy Orton came out and actually got a fairly decent reaction from the crowd, but that seemed all for naught as the match continued. And actually, now it seems as if Kofi Kingston comes out, and now he's the popular one, and everybody's in favor and cheering. The match was back and forth. I really didn't have a vested interest in this. I'm not a big Randy Orton supporter. I don't think he's horrible, but he's definitely not my favorite. Matchup ended fairly decently, where Orton goes for the punt, and Kofi ends up avoiding it, kind of ducks out of the way, and hits the Trouble in Paradise and gets the win.
Yeah, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Although I don't think it was a bad, terrible match. Randy's definitely not on my favor, or not one of my favorites to watch, but I don't think it's coming off of Kofi anytime soon. I think he's going to go into WrestleMania as a champ.
I'd like to see that happen. I'd be curious as to see who actually challenges him then.
Yeah, I'm not sure who you'd have to challenge, but I think he's going to get he's going to get a big fight, and there ain't no better place to do it than WrestleMania.
Would you go the direction of having Daniel Bryan take him on in a rematch?
I mean, I don't know who I'd want, but I think he's going to get it. Again, you're talking, you got to get through the draft first before you can even try and figure out who you'd want to take him on. Because you could say Daniel Bryan, and then next thing you know, Daniel Bryan's on Raw.
Yeah, or NXT, as apparently the rumor is all three brands are supposedly involved in this draft. So who knows? That'd be kind of cool. Daniel Bryan versus Adam Cole. Daniel Bryan versus Johnny Gargano. Yeah, I'm in for this. I am in for that, as long as that's the only one. Like, as long as we don't get crazy with it. Let's not send. Well, maybe R-Truth could be good in NXT. I don't know. That's actually an interesting thought.
I think Owens is going to NXT.
Yeah, this past Tuesday night, where Kevin Owens gets fired because of not ruling in the favor of Shane McMahon, and then Shane doesn't show up at at Clash, and Kevin Owens doesn't show up at the Clash. So it becomes a question of, where are they going to go next? You're probably right. Kevin Owens to NXT would make good sense, actually.
Yep. All right, back to the Clash.
Back to the Clash.
You are so scatterbrained. You're just jumping all over the place.
I'm trying to stay on the tracks, but I keep getting derailed. Then we go to the matchup for the matchup that apparently nobody wanted to see because there was literally no crowd reaction until the end of this one. A no disqualification matchup between Roman Reigns and the newly, newly emancipated Eric Rowan, the newly freed. I don't know if I want to choose that wording. Anyway, Eric Rowan on his own in a singles matchup with Roman Reigns in a no DQ match. The matchup itself was just kind of, There were some moments in it that kind of were cool, but the ending was what definitely stood out, and we all kind of agreed that we felt a little bad for Eric Rowan as Luke Harper makes his return. Harper and Rowan end up putting Roman Reigns into a table, into the post, all over the place, but basically putting him down, and Rowan comes out victorious. Brian, you are the one that predicted the victor on this one. Tell me your thoughts on what happened with this matchup.
My thoughts? I just picked what made sense. That's all I did. I think there's a plan in place, and it's going to affect Eric, and now it'll affect Luke Harper, and I think you're going to see Bray get his family back. And I think that's just the start of it.
I'm okay with Bray Wyatt having the Wyatt family back together. I think it sets up pretty nicely. I think that Eric Rowan is probably best in the tag team with Luke Harper. I would say that he has potential to be on his own, but the one chance they gave him, they threw Luke Harper out there to save him before really it needed to be done. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like they could have done something here.
I don't know what else you could have done.
So
I think sometimes simple is better.
True. And the early rumor that I'm seeing now is that apparently it could be Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns versus Harper and Rowan.
Yay. I mean, tell me that doesn't just have Swerve written all over it.
Well, now that could be cool. If Daniel Bryan is the mastermind, it was me, Austin. It was me all along. I actually would kind of dig that. That would be cool because it makes everybody swerve twice.
You
don't think so? No.
No, that's just a one swerve. Daniel Bryan coming out. Oh, I don't like liars and yada yada yada. He's still a bad guy, and now he's going to get a match with a good guy as a tag team partner. He's not going to turn. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I don't think there's. You'd have to be kind of foolish to not see that one coming. Even if it were to survive one or two pay-per-views, you know,
I wouldn't
you'd
mind
have to be
seeing it,
foolish.
So we go from, again, I think the match that really nobody cared about. I mean, you could have heard a pin drop in the crowd during Rowan and Roman's match, all the way up until the end. That was to the main event for the Universal Championship. Now we know already because of the beginning of Raw that Seth Rollins successfully retains. But Brian, can you think of a time where it took 4 finishers to end a matchup outside of John Cena versus The Rock? Because that one I think took 25.
It happens all the time. Especially, I mean, what's the finisher nowadays?
That's a good point.
I mean, there's plenty of matches nowadays where 3, 4 finishers get hit and they still manage to kick out. I mean, especially if like Brock Lesnar's in there, or now Braun, or any number of people.
I feel like this is yet another chance that they had to really do something with Braun, and he just continues to get slid down. They look past him, they go beyond him, and he gets used. A guy that size, a guy with that ability, I mean, sooner or later, it's got to be his time.
They're not worried about him. They focus on, the Roman Reigns of the world. When they should be focusing on other people. I mean, that's not anything I haven't brought up before.
True.
Look at Bray Wyatt. I mean, even when he was Bray Wyatt with the Fireflies. Are you kidding me? Yeah. I mean, we let that one go. So, I mean, literally, they thought he was, he had to be repackaged. And yet the repackage is turning out to probably bite him in the butt, because they're probably like, well, pal, this is your last shot. If you don't pull this one off, well, we're going to have to do something else with you. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And now look at him. Braun's no different. They keep wasting time on people that nobody wants to see.
Yeah.
Baron Corbin, Roman Reigns, any number of people.
Just there's so much that gets thrown by the wayside. You get these opportunities, you get these chances to see, just the flash of a brilliant moment, just the speck of it, and it makes you think, wow, they could finally be, and then it's like, nope, never mind, they're not. It's very frustrating as a fan. I mean, you get to see these moments where it seems like something's finally coming together, and then it's like, wow, how do you go so far off the mark?
Well, no. So remember, they probably have told these people, and they say it in documentaries and everything else, that, well, it's up to them.
Right.
Okay, we may say, Ray, you're going to be the demon, but now after that, it's up to him to pull it off. Well, when they pull it off, they still get punished.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, some of them not just pull it off, but actually, you look at them and you think, oh, I don't understand why they're not being pushed. Well, they're not being pushed because people like Vince have forgotten, what this is all about. And it's putting butts in seats. And I'd pay for Bray and I'd pay for Braun, but I personally wouldn't pay for Roman or Baron. And it's not that I think their characters are so cool that they're bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
No, they suck. they, we should waste our time on Bray and Braun, and you'd probably have a different program right now.
Yeah, it's what's the word? Disconcerting when you see some of these guys that have just limitless ability, and then they are put in a position where, regardless, kind of like you pointed out, regardless of what they do or how they do it, or even how over it gets them, they seemingly pay a price that's, well, it's either unfair or it's just unwarranted. So then you look in and you start seeing all of these moves that are happening around, and you know that around the corner right now, October 2nd, All Elite Wrestling is on its way, and it's headed to primetime television. We got confirmation of the first singles matchup for MJF, as he's going to be taking on Brandon Cutler. Now, I don't want to come off as ignorant here, but I only know but so much about Brandon Cutler. If you're watching Being the Elite, I know that you've probably seen this guy. He's been touted as a independent superstar, where basically they found him on the indies. They value his talent and want to give him an opportunity to provide for his family and for his fellow brothers of the ring kind of thing. I mean, they've treated him like he's this huge underdog story. MJF, there's no better person to put down an underdog than perhaps one of the best heels in the business today, and that would be MJF.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know but so much about him. The only knowledge I have is the match on the 2nd.
Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. If you check out the Being the Elite episode on YouTube, you can see where Cutler is basically sitting backstage talking to his wife on the telephone, and all of a sudden there's, I don't know if you've seen these segments, Brian, but it's like the two grouchy guys in the Muppets, the ones that make fun of all the shows and everything. Well,
you're talking about the fingers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they're like putting them down, they're making fun of him, and all of a sudden MJF walks in, and he's looking at him, he's like, "Hey, I happen to agree with these guys, you're an asshole." He just starts going off on him. Just some random, it just seems so random, but it's pretty funny actually for MJF.
Yeah, I mean, he's not without charisma.
He is a salt of the earth guy.
Salt of the earth.
So, hey, at this point, we've talked about the Clash. We've talked about what's happening on Raw so far. Nothing really huge on either.
Well, other than Rusev coming back. You missed it, didn't you?
Rusev's the daddy. Apparently. Can't you see I'm that baby's pappy?
Oh, such twists and turns. Does that mean that now Lana and Mike are going to have to form a tag team? And oh my God, I need revenge.
Wait, I think I've seen that before. Wait a minute. Not another love triangle or four-way or. They do love their multi-person matches, don't they?
Yeah, and the bad part is most marriages in the business tend not to last after things like this take place.
Not that I would wish ill upon anyone's marriage, but I'm actually surprised that Lana and Rusev have lasted as long as they have. They've put that poor couple through, like, everything. They made Lana make out with Dolph on TV. I mean, even as the most secure guy in the world, that would have to make you a little uncomfortable.
Well, I mean, how many of them actually last?
I don't know, dude. Like, I can't think of one that's been around longer than maybe 10 years at the longest.
Well, no, I'm talking once they get involved in a storyline like this, it's almost like the kiss of death.
Oh, I mean, Randy and Liz, they were done. Damn it. You can think of them all until you finally have to think of them.
Mm-hmm.
Damn it. Well, Randy Liz is the one that stands out to me. But you're right. There are a ton of them, wrestling marriages that just end up going to the wayside. Or wrestling relationships. I mean, Buddy Murphy and Alexa Bliss were an item. They were never put into a storyline together, but seemingly having to go their separate ways because of just the way the business works. As far as, how about Cass and Carmella?
Yeah, but I'm talking storyline. I'm not talking like every. I mean, because you talk about some of them, some people, when you talk about Flair and God knows how many of them, Cena, you know what I'm saying? I'm talking like you're in a marriage and you get put in a storyline and it never doesn't play out well.
Jake and Cheryl Roberts is a good example. They did the Rick Rude storyline, and all of a sudden Jake and Cheryl are no longer wanting to be together. Of course, Jake had his problems back then. We probably don't want to go that route. We're going to leave that alone. It's another episode for another day. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Wrestling marriages just don't tend to do well. So this is something I saw. We talked about it at the top of the show, and I wanted to get into it because I thought it was kind of humorous. So I always joke about the All Elite Wrestling fan page on Facebook and how there's constantly WWE talk on this fan page. But this post actually made me scratch my head. Top heel in the business. And the post asked the question, all right, who do you think is the top heel, the top bad guy in the business? And then they responded by saying, it's got to be Triple H. And I thought to myself, the irony, first off, of being in an All Elite Wrestling fan group where a guy's posting about Triple H being the top bad guy in the business. But also, while I told you earlier, as far as I think Triple H is tremendous as a performer, and I am a fan, but the top bad guy in the business, man, that's a stretch. There's a lot of top-notch bad guys out there that know how to make the crowd just go nuts. Now, it's not to say that Triple H can't, because at Triple H's prime, he could control a crowd like nobody's business. But top in the business, like, Brian, is Triple H really that high up on the chart?
I mean, does he even have an active role right now?
No. He hasn't been on television. He hasn't had a real role to play. He's... I mean, well, I guess outside of being the figurehead of NXT and now the guy who occasionally wrestles in Saudi Arabia.
Does he have an on-camera personality?
Not right now.
Then he can't be the top bad guy. I mean, that's pretty stupid here, fellas. See, now you're going to make me call them bobbleheads because this is a bobblehead moment. You have somebody that watches only apparently one brand of wrestling or one company, and while there's nothing wrong with that, you shouldn't be on somebody else's fan page spouting stupid stuff, right? Because we talked about it. So he's not on TV, so he can't qualify as top bad guy today, right? Now, can he come back and be top bad guy? Quite possibly. I say he's been there before. But let's remember when he didn't have a lot of competition. I mean, realistically, who was his competition during Evolution?
The only guy that was as close to where he was maybe JBL as a bad guy.
Okay, so he beats JBL. But again, you're telling me he only had one guy that would even compete with him.
I mean, in a bad guy role at that time, so I'm talking 2003, 2004, that range. Jericho wasn't quite bad guy at that point. Angle was in and out, but he wasn't on screen enough to really be focused to it. He had guys like John Cena and Shawn Michaels to work opposite, and Chris Benoit to work opposite of, and his Randy Orton feud. And I mean, God, who didn't hate Triple H at that time, where he was taking on like Rob Van Dam and Booker T? I mean, we all repeatedly complained about Triple H because he was just, and what we later learned was he was just that good at goading a reaction out of people. And JBL, I think, was towards the latter part of that able to transition it. But yeah, I really can't think of another bad guy from that era, and because nobody from TNA really stood out as the top bad guy, at least in that time. I mean, TNA's had their share of good heels, good bad guys, but I think at that age, yeah, I would tell you that he could have been that top guy. But you're right, he didn't really have a lot of competition at all.
Right. So if he doesn't have competition, we'll make him the de facto for that era.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we've ruled out he's not the top bad guy today because, by God, he's just not a bad guy. Right. And
right.
even if he came out, he wouldn't be a bad guy. I think right now he's in that rare Flair-esque type breed where if he shows up, doesn't matter if he's heel or not. He could literally probably beat up Santa Claus, and they're going to cheer him.
Yeah. I mean,
so
he's been like that for a while too.
Yeah. So, granted, is he doing heel stuff? Yes, but he's so good at being a heel that he's now a good guy. De facto, much like Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Austin was a bad guy, right? Pretty much from Jump Street. But it took them all of less than 24 hours, I think, for him to become their biggest face. Quasi-face. The middle guy.
Yeah, the anti-hero.
Right. So we've got that air that, yeah, he was probably the main bad guy. Right? And then let's go. Today he's not in it. So we can't count him today. So let's look at historically. I mean, does he even rank in the top 10 historically?
No, I don't see him hitting the top 10 now. Top 20, maybe, possibly the top 15. But you think of all of the really just evil bad guys. I mean, think about like the Undertaker was. I mean, he was the pinnacle of a bad guy for the longest amount of time. We know that. We know that, Ric Flair, of course, it goes without saying, as a bad guy, was one of the best villains, period, to ever lace him up.
I would say Flair was top. And then, don't forget you got guys like Piper.
Yeah.
And some of the great ones from the 80s.
Adrian Adonis was a tremendous bad guy.
I wouldn't put Adrian in the top 10.
Andre the Giant?
No, because, he was only a bad guy for a limited amount of time. Mm-hmm. He was a great opposite Hogan, but, again, he was only a bad guy for maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
And I don't think he wouldn't qualify, in my mind, anywhere close to being one of the greatest bad guys at that era. You had Ted DiBiase, Terry Funk. There were so many. Yeah, Flair. You had so many so many heels that clearly were bigger heels than he was during that time. So, but I mean, I just don't. I wouldn't even if you were to put him in there today
Hmm.
and try and be like, oh, he's the greatest heel of all time. No.
I mean, honestly, there's a
I would even say today, if you were to come if you were to put him with somebody today,
hmm
I think Jericho might be bigger than he is.
yeah. I was just about to say that. I think right now, if we're talking today, period, the top bad guy in the business, it's got to be Jericho. It's got to be. I mean, because this is a guy that took a back elbow smash and made it a devastating finisher. This is a guy that demands a thank you, for getting AEW on TNT. I mean, only a guy like Chris Jericho can pull that off successfully and reinvent himself and change and adapt in such a way where it not only makes you want to boo him, but it also makes you want to see what he's going to do next. Because you never know. I mean, he's did what does he call himself in Japan? The Painmaker.
Maybe something like that.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
I mean, his feud with Kenny Omega was tremendous, but it's been his slow pacing. It's his ability to take the crowd and make them almost like make them turn on themselves. Like they come off, they're like, "Oh yeah, it's Jericho," and he plays into it just enough to where when he turns it around, it's just like twisting the knife. It's amazing.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean he wouldn't even come close to Jericho today.
Yeah. Ooh, I wonder how that would sit with him, knowing the history between him and Jericho. If somebody were to say, "Yeah, you're all right, but you're no Chris Jericho."
I don't. So I would imagine he's got an ego.
Yeah.
I would imagine he knows he's one of the best of his era,
Hmm.
and I don't think it affects him. It would affect him because I mean, ultimately, look at where he is,
Right.
and I'm sure he would probably welcome that comparison and be like, "Thank you," and because again, I mean, this isn't like we're saying Baron Corbin's better than you. This is Chris Jericho.
That's true. I think we've broken a rule of how many times we can say that guy's name in a show. I think we've given him more airtime.
Well, but you see what I'm saying?
I do.
I mean, this isn't like, um, he's just he's being compared to some schmuck. Chris Jericho is a legit um, champion, and he's going to one day be ranked up there with the rest of them.
Hmm.
With the Hogans and the Flairs and the Austins and the Rocks and dare I say Cena and the Bachwinkles and
He's
the
got to be.
Funks and yeah, there's
I mean,
no doubt he will.
at this level of his career, he's. I mean, doesn't matter when it took place. He's held a championship in ECW, WCW, WWE, AEW, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. So if you're going off championships, there's your Hall of Fame career right there. I mean, the decades that he's lasted in. I mean, could you imagine? Would you have ever thought that Chris Jericho, back when he was a victim of the conspiracy theory back in WCW, would you have ever thought he'd be here now? Like at this
Nope.
level?
Nope. Mm-mm. And again, I mean, that's what we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they get so bent on pushing their guys
Yeah.
that they lose, a superstar right in front of them.
Mm-hmm. I think that when it comes down to seeing these performers that are like once in a lifetime performers, you don't recognize them until you get close to a point where you may never see him perform again. Like with Mick Foley, he was many would say that he was towards the end of his career when he finally won the WWF Championship. At least it appeared that way. And then the next thing you know, he's got a resurgence, and he solidifies what, eventually he would have gotten to the Hall of Fame. But if he doesn't have that run where he beats The Rock, on Monday Night Raw, does Mick Foley get in the Hall of Fame as quickly as he did?
I mean, to me, whether he gets in first ballot and of course, in the WWE, there's not really a first ballot, but
right.
If it takes him 20 years, he's still a Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the feud with The Rock or whatever just simply helps put him there. They have this weird way of picking people, so it could have taken him time to get there, but that wouldn't have diminished his career any.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with what we've seen, and when these folks have, blown up, when they've fired up towards the top, it reinvigorated their careers and gave them an opportunity. But it almost like it reminds people of just what they're capable of, which is something that you see some of it. You see some of it nowadays, but I think you had a chance more back when there wasn't social media and you didn't have the access to some of the information we have now, where those moments just stood out and they were bigger. I feel like nowadays, even when it's a guy like when Ricochet won the U.S. title, back in the day, if this happened during the Attitude Era, and we could have those debates all day long, but back then, if that had happened, it would have been a much larger event than it was when it happened.
I don't think so.
No?
No, I mean, so back then you were watching it, and you might very well have watched him win. Mm-hmm. Well, what's no difference in today? Did you watch him win?
Yeah.
Okay, so social media plays no part in it. The only time social media would come into play would be like a house show. And even back then, there were ways to find out certain things that happened at a house show.
That's true.
I mean, social media plays a part in today's world, but I don't think as far as like the impact a show would have on you. Mm-hmm. Be it a title change or whatever, is going to come into play unless, again, that's how you find out somebody gets hurt at a house show or something. Something at a house show happens. Look, there's them fighting up the stairs. So I just don't think it comes into play so much. I don't think it diminishes. I don't think it diminishes the impact of what you see, especially if you're watching it.
Yeah.
I guess that would be what I'm trying to say.
I feel like there's an argument for both sides of it. I can understand why. I mean, you're watching it either way, so that makes sense. And the impact shouldn't be lost on you for that. But at the same point, it could just be more of an all-around awareness, not just social media, but overall just the exposure is bigger now. So maybe it's just because of the fact that, from my perspective, you've seen so much of these types of moments that they almost, is it safe to say you're almost desensitized to it, to the magnitude of it?
I mean, the only way you're going to get desensitized is if you know it's happening.
Well, then I guess that wouldn't be the right word, because I definitely didn't know he was going to do it when he did. So that I'll just take that one on the chin there. I don't know that there's a better way to word it, and I don't want to.
Well, I mean, I don't think you become desensitized. I just don't think that today's product is written like it used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be written by people that knew ring psychology and stuff.
Hmm.
It was booked by people that knew this. It was written by people that knew this. They would know, um, certain things that today's writers just apparently don't know. And I think that's why you feel desensitized. Is that it's not written the same way
Hmm.
as when you were young. Because back then, I mean, you would literally, I mean, they would pull a surprise out of thin air, and I mean, literally, you would go crazy
Yeah.
because you didn't see it coming, right? You literally didn't see it coming. The dusty finish. Ah, you never saw a dusty finish coming,
No, you definitely didn't.
but it was. I mean, it was done so many times. It's now a popular phrase. You know, so but nowadays it's not that you're desensitized; it's that you can see it coming from a
Yeah.
mile away. So it doesn't. I don't think I can't remember the last time I had my heartstrings tugged on, or I was literally blindsided by something. And I don't think Again, it's not that I'm desensitized. It's just that I think even the common fan can see it coming nowadays if you sit down and look at it.
Do you feel like the overall surprise factor just throughout wrestling has kind of gotten diminished, or is it just more with what's on TV?
Well, I mean, I don't watch Impact. I don't really watch New Japan anymore because I don't have the program. So a lot of it is just simply, what I'm able to watch now, which
Yeah.
is the WWE and some ROH from time to time. So again, it's not written the same way as it used to be.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, literally, they telegraphed Rowan getting a new partner, right? He
Yep.
come out and said it. Okay, well, hmm. So you tell me you're getting a new partner, and Daniel Bryan smacked you in the face, so it make no sense to take him.
Hmm.
Well, who else you gonna take? Oh, let's go get Luke Harper.
He hasn't done anything in a while. Let's bring him out.
Yeah.
Well, and
So
that's where that detriment for having such a huge roster is, because you got so many guys that sit on the sideline until you're finally like, it's like a toy that you haven't played with in 6 months. Oh yeah, I forgot I had this guy.
yeah, but again, though, who couldn't see that happening? You should have expected that the only way he beats Roman is some type of interference. Um, honestly, I don't think he beats him cleanly. I don't think anybody's going to write that one.
Yeah.
Um, but again, if who else would you put with him? Oh, I know, dun, 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 Luke Harper.
So, we are coming up on the draft for WWE. They're going to be doing the draft to split out SmackDown and Raw. We're going to finally see the wild card rule is going to go away. And in the midst of all of this, you've got All Elite Wrestling's debut on TNT. You've got that happening, and it's happening in such a way now where, the shots that are now being fired is you can clearly see, and I don't care what either side says anymore, you can clearly see that the battle lines are drawn. And it doesn't get any clearer than October 1st, where, AEW is going to do a preview show for their debut on TNT. This just came out, matter of fact, just a couple of days ago. So they're going to do a preview show. It's probably going to only be an hour long. And it's going to debut on TNT just to kind of give fans a sample of what they can expect. So, that gets announced. What do we find out on October 1st is going to happen next? Yeah, WWE's gonna do some kind of a preview show of NXT and what they can expect going forward, or it's amazing to me how quickly the responses are happening. But if you're the guys up north, is this kind of a, I don't want to say, is it a hasty decision that's made here? Oh well, they're doing it on the first, we got to do it.
What do you? I mean, literally. So let's just spin the fact that you were pretty much a bobblehead for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and you're new at this,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm not going to say they're running scared, the WWE, but this goes to prove my point, right? They are scared a little bit, and they're not gonna, they're not gonna give AEW a chance to come out the gate swinging. They're going to fight, but you fight because they do worry you some. I'm not going to say scared,
Right.
but they do worry you some because you haven't really ever put your NXT into the spot they should be,
Mm-hmm.
and that's on Vince, right? They should have been on a much higher pedestal. People that came from the NXT roster should have been on a much higher pedestal, and they never really did it. Well, now they're forced to. They don't really have the greatest faith in them. So let's try and beat AEW, right? And by God, let's do to them what they're doing to us. They're not going to come out on Tuesday and just put on a free show for the whole world to see. We're going to try and split them and see what happens.
Right.
And I mean, again, in some ways, is it smart? Sure, because you don't want your competition to be out there all by themselves.
Right.
However, the bad part is if you go out there on this and you get smoked, get beat, well, it's not going to be a good way to go into this.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't know what would have been smarter, not doing it or doing it and trying to compete.
Well, I mean, I'm in the camp where, like Bully Ray described on Busted Open, I agree that it's smart to not let them go unopposed on Wednesdays. I agree with that. Does it necessarily mean that one's going to improve the other? I don't know yet. We'll see. But
yeah, but I'm talking not Wednesday. I'm talking yeah.
So with that though, I agree to in part at least on the Wednesdays. But now when you look at Tuesdays, I'm and you just said it. I've been a lifelong WWE fan. I have been. I don't have any trouble admitting that. But at the same time, I mean, only a fool would look at it and not see it for what it really is, and that's just somebody. It's like you're stabbing blindly in the dark. You're making a decision to make a decision. That doesn't mean it's a good one. Now, it doesn't also mean that they're going to lose or win. It's way too early for me to predict that. But at the same time, you have a great point. If you do your preview show, and All Elite does theirs, and All Elite, because it's All Elite, smokes yours, you're not getting a good look. That's not going to go the way you want it to go. Because All Elite Wrestling has everything to prove and nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. And that makes them really dangerous because they've got money. You already know they've got the backing they need. They've got intelligent people writing television. And, oh yeah, they've also got some of the best professional wrestlers in the world, period. You got some of the best tag teams, some of the best singles wrestlers. And if there's a question about that, go back and watch Kenny Omega and Pac and tell me that those aren't two of the best performers in the world. You can't. You just can't. I mean, I love WWE. I'll always have a degree of loyalty to them, but at the same time, you have to recognize the marketplace for what it is, and it's gonna get competitive. And I have to agree. I feel like the Tuesday decision is just a hasty one. And while I would agree they're not necessarily running scared, it is a shot in the dark. It's like they're backpedaling.
Yeah. Um, I mean, literally, and you know it'll happen. If there comes a time, and it'll start on that Tuesday,
Hmm.
that NXT cannot pull its weight against AEW, you know Vince gets involved. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
And once Vince gets involved, you can wrap it up. The AEW is going to prevail. And I mean, he is, in my opinion, he's quite out of touch right now.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of this until we get a month or two in with with the I guess the Wednesday Night War. We'll see if it's really even a war, because right now it's going to be hopefully two good shows running where we can say, man, AEW was great. This match was good. This match was good. This match was good. And then NXT, wow, we had this match and this match, because we really don't know what to expect from a 2-hour NXT show. We do know that it's September 18th when NXT debuts on USA. The first hour is on USA, and the second hour is going to be on the WWE Network. That'll be an interesting dichotomy. The following week is the same way, and then on October 2nd, strangely enough, on October 2nd it becomes a question of who's better, at least in the moment. And that's going to be that moment where, honestly, I feel like Cody is going to be looking at his people in the back saying, guess what? We just made history, and we're about to, poop on the front porch of the WWE, because they can. Like, they're in that position. You don't get many opportunities to do that.
Yeah, but I mean, the first show, 6 months, it's way too early.
Yeah.
You have to, I mean, this is something you have to look at, um, 5 years down the road, and see what happens. Because, much like Impact, if AEW finds a way to stick around,
Mm-hmm.
For 5 years, again, does that mean they're not successful?
Well, and that's the
No.
thing. No, yeah, exactly. I would agree, because all they have to do is survive. They don't have to go out there and win a quote-unquote ratings war. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think we're past the point of any true ratings war. I think it's more of a question of, okay, what happens next? I think that's what it's going to be. It's almost like a game of top that.
I don't think it's like a game with top that. I think it is a ratings war. AEW's already come out and said it. The WWE has come out and said it because of all the moves they're doing. It's clearly a war, but oh my God, it's so stupid. Anyway, it's clearly a war.
Yeah.
But this isn't. I don't think anybody's expecting the knockout to come the first night.
I hope not. I hope that fans that are watching this is watching it for the long game, because it's going to take some time to see either side change gears, either side make a change, because I mean, all Elite Wrestling, to be successful, I agree with you, they have to survive. They've got to make money, they've got to draw fans repetitively. They've proven they can sell tickets, but they got to keep doing that, and that takes consistency, and it's going to take more than just 2 months to really develop any kind of consistency. At the same point, if WWE is going to make any change, if NXT is going to make any change and make their portion of the marketplace any better, it's going to take longer than 2 months. So yeah, I totally agree. It's gonna be more than 6 months before we finally see some kind of a measurement that's reliable.
Yeah, but NXT is already established,
True.
right? So we can't give them a 2 month pass, right? If they go out there and screw it up and stink up the joint, well, guess what? They just stunk up the joint. They have been around for a while. I mean, we've even crowned them as the best that the WWE has right now.
Yeah.
So they don't get a free pass. They don't get a 2 month. Oh, they're just getting their legs under them.
Mm-hmm.
No, they don't get that. They have to go out there and perform right from Jump Street.
How long do you think USA gives them if they don't perform in the ratings?
Well, I mean, what are you gonna put in their place?
Reruns of Suits. I mean, they've got plenty of content. If they wanted to, they put on whatever they want. Hell, they could show reruns of the Chrisleys and Ms. and Mrs. Wow, that's really kind of sad that they could do that, but they really could. It's interesting.
Yeah, but honestly, I'm sure Vince isn't going to let them do that.
Well, I mean, I would hope not. The amount of money that's being put into them has been pretty extreme, and I would hope USA has more of a vested interest than just, okay, well, show us what you got. I hope that they've got some kind of a plan. I would assume they would. I mean, I'm not going to try to speak for them, but I would assume they do.
Yeah, but we're not talking. I mean, USA is going to expect them to come out there and do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to come out there and do their thing. They have to come out there and be NXT. Do I think if they don't perform, or is there going to be USA changes? Changes USA wants, the USA Network wants?
Mm-hmm.
Probably, much like Fox. If something happens in SmackDown and it doesn't start performing after a certain period of time, are we going to have another draft? Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about it. That's how it's going to be. But again, you cannot just give NXT a pass. This is you're going to find out. They're in a bad spot because the WWE and all the fans and everything they got going for them right now, they have to perform.
Mm-hmm.
They more than Raw or SmackDown now have the weight of the WWE on their shoulders because they're the ones that are getting direct competition. Well, I guess it depends on what they ultimately do with Impact, but wouldn't that be something? They put Impact head to head with something now.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, Fridays. If Impact airs on Fridays with Access TV's wrestling, package, you could feasibly have SmackDown versus Impact. Holy crap! We never thought we'd see a rebirth of that, huh?
I don't know if I'd want SmackDown. I don't know if I'd want the misfortune of SmackDown. Because I think honestly, SmackDown is going to get the benefit of Fox. Fox is going to dump money into it at first.
Yeah.
Because Fox is going to want it to perform like the NFL and baseball and all that other stuff. So they're gonna make sure it works. But again, you got them competing against somebody that shouldn't even be there.
Yeah.
And God, you know, who knows? Maybe old Mark is going to pull the whole Ted Turner thing.
Oh
Well,
no.
Vince, I'm in the wrestling business.
You know what? I would really enjoy that. It would be, you thought AEW was going to be, a thorn in your side, and only to have it be like, it'd be almost like if ECW had just miraculously turned the corner. Wow, that's crazy, man. We really are in a position where we could possibly see that. I never
Yeah.
even thought of that.
No, nobody has. Because all anybody's talking about is AEW.
Yep.
Well, now Impact is got new life on a new show and or new channel, and now they got the money behind them. So I mean, it's hard to say what's going to happen now. But again, I say I want Monday night. Because I think the Raw is probably going to be your weakest roster, and I want Monday night. I want to compete against Raw.
I mean, if that's what it takes, I mean, that could be, man, what a cool time to be a fan. I mean, during the Attitude Era, you had those moments, but you didn't know you were having those moments until it was almost done. That you were seeing something truly historic. Now it's like you're like at the precipice of it. You're like right at the beginning. How cool is that? How many times do you figure you'd get to see that in your own lifetime?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I never really thought about it, but I mean, it's going to be. To me, it's going to be cool for AEW to get NXT, and it's the best versus the best.
Yeah.
But again, now in the swipe of a pen, the WWE really is going to have problems, or quite possibly could have problems if Impact gets their stuff straight. Because the Impact does have a decent roster. They don't have a bad roster. And they're not, I mean, it's not like their product, the storylines and stuff are bad. I mean, they have other issues that hold them back. So now we'll get to see. And again, hopefully old Mark says, "Hey, Vince, remember me, big guy?"
It's one of those cool points where we sit in a position where we could feasibly see a big three again. And yeah, we gave Impact for years. We were like, "Y'all are done. You're done. Period. It's over. Kiss it goodbye." And then finally, you get these moments like where AJ Styles and Rob Van Dam were having tremendous main event matches. And, I mean, you had these moments there where it seemed like Impact could really do something. And then they had Aces and Eights, which was a hell of a storyline. But as things went up, they went down. They had possibilities and they had options. And then, they just seemed like they were out of touch. And then they had problems with payroll. And they had all these things. How interesting and poetic would it be to see them come back from all of that? Even the stuff we talked about earlier with Killer Cross, to see them come back from that and truly make a major statement by competing, not necessarily winning because they don't really have to, but competing with SmackDown and then seeing AEW compete with NXT. Raw, I mean, I would never say that Raw would completely go away, but I suppose it's always a possibility.
You know what's funny? What's really funny is there was a time where I was up on my soapbox touting all this conspiracy theory, And everybody telling me, nope, it'll never happen. And now, more than ever, I think Vince might be losing sleep.
I think you're right.
Because again, so here's the other thing that Vince has to compete with, right? So we already know what he did with AEW and the contracts. Gave them more money. All this other stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So now you just can't dump them without paying them, right? So this 100-man roster is pretty much stuck, right? And you don't really have the room for a lot of these guys on the indies that are making big waves. So where do you think they're going to start going? Now, you don't just have one other place you can go.
Yeah.
Now you have two. Isn't that just crazy? If you're Vince, doesn't that make you just be like, oh, wow, I probably should have knocked them out a long time ago. You know?
Yeah.
I probably should have offered them more to buy the company. Should have stayed in it a little bit longer. So it's crazy. But again, this is the crazy world of pro wrestling. You know? Now it's a 3-man race.
Yeah, it's now a time where we can really look at it from a perspective of, wow, what's going to happen next? Like, it's actually at a point where we can actually see it for the possibilities and not seem... I would say that we're finally in a position where we just don't come off as jaded. We can actually look at it and kind of be like, wow, this could really happen. This is really cool.
Yeah. Again, it's in one fell swoop, and nobody's talking about it. See, that's the crazy thing. Nobody's talking about it yet. Nobody's brought it up that I've seen. Well, now it's a 3-man competition, and then that doesn't necessarily bode too well for the WWE. Granted, they may very well survive. They may come out on top. If they do, more power to them. They'll be better than they were today, because they're going to have to be.
Yeah.
However, I think they've painted themselves into a nice little corner, and they may find out what it's like to face competition. Honestly, they haven't faced in almost 25 years.
And that's going to be what's really cool to see is what happens coming out of this. How do we, how does each side respond to the shots that are going to get taken? Because there's going to be, you won't see that over there, and you won't see that on that station, and they're going to take those shots. And I think, maybe it's not as pronounced as it was with what we saw in the past, but we've got an opportunity here, and the cool thing is you don't know what's going to happen, and that's why it's cool. We're coming up on that time, and we want to go ahead and get wrapped up. Of course, you can catch the show on C2CRadioshow.com, Spreaker.com. You can download us through iTunes and any of your favorite podcast distributors. And then, of course, at the Beyond Ringside Radio Network, you can always catch us up on replays, as well as the website. You can replay the show at your leisure. Just a quick reminder, Brian's Corner, which has the most recent edition of the Pro Wrestling Crate, which has got some outstanding tag teams. And Brian, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but did you know the Young Bucks sent out a spoiler for the next crate?
Well, that normally happens about this time anyway. Pro Wrestling Crate always sends out you talking about an item in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in it like a T-shirt.
Yeah. So they showed an image of the T-shirt there. You can also catch up with Pro Wrestling Crate. By the way, you can follow their Twitter feed right there through our page. We'll be putting that up. Matter of fact, I just updated that, so it should be showing up now. But yeah, so go ahead and check that out. Get a chance to see some of the goodies that Brian has acquired from yet another awesome Loot Crate.
Well, so that was last month's.
Mm-hmm.
I should be getting this month's. What's today? 17th?
Today is the 16th.
16th. So in the next probably 5 days or so, maybe sooner, maybe a little bit later, I'll get the next one and I'll put it up after I get it. And then we'll also discuss what will be in next month's crate. Because next month's looks really good too.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot to talk about. Of course, as we get closer and closer to October 2nd, don't forget the Corner to Corner crew will be there as history unfolds live in Washington, D.C., so we'll be there checking that out. You can catch up with Rob on Twitter at that's his Instagram, at Rob Hefner C2C on Twitter.
Find me on the milkcarton.com.
See, you know what? He's not here for the joke, so we can put it on there.
That's right. We can put him on there.
You can also catch up with him on Instagram at RDHUWP. You find me on Twitter at Stan Grubb.
Oh, Christ.
What's that?
Ouch. So, Lacey is fighting Dana.
Mm-hmm.
And Dana took some shots at Lacey. And but Lacey just had Dana laying on her back with her head outside the ring. So she's on the ring, but she's laying with her head outside the ring. And then she did this move off the rope, and then she drove her feet into Dana's face. And that looked like that might have hurt.
Well, Lacey just delivered the women's
and
right.
There's a nice stiff clothesline.
Yeah, there's... Oh, now she's doing a sharpshooter.
Oh, that's for Natalia.
Oh, okay. Well, Lacey with a little poke at the fun of... on one knee. That's a little variation. A little lion tamer into a sharpshooter kind of thing. That's kind of cool. So, yeah, you can catch up with me on Twitter at Stan Grubb on Twitter, Stan Grubb on Instagram, and Stan Grubb on Facebook. Brian can be found on Twitter at STRCP21. And that is indeed going to do it for another edition of Corner to Corner. Brian, final thought before we close it out and say goodbye?
Oh, I don't have no final thought.
Yeah, me neither. Just thought it would be cool to ask. All right, everybody, have a good one. We'll see you next week.
Oh, my God, you're killing me, kid.
See you next week, folks. Have a great night.
I think Lacey just called to do that, right?